All right, you're listening to Being Built. I'm Aaron Davis, the host and the founder of Reckless Tech. We're an executive search and tech staffing firm. I'm here with Benita Capers.
Yep.
You're the senior manager of dispatch operations and analytics, right?
Yep.
For the Last Mile Food Rescue. Mm-hmm. So tell us all about the Last Mile. It's a pretty cool organization you're part of.
Yeah, so Last Mile Food Rescue, I like to say, is the technological solution for food waste and hunger in the Cincinnati area. So what we do is if there is a grocery store, a restaurant, a food production company that has good food that they can't sell yet, usually right now that's just going straight to the trash, straight to the landfill. But what we do is we pick it up and we'll send it to a nonprofit, to a food pantry, a shelter, anyone who's working to end hunger in our city. And we do that through an app. So I like to say it's the tech solution because it's almost like Uber, but for food rescue. So we use an app. We have over hundreds and thousands of volunteers who can go into the app. They can find a food rescue that works for their schedule, with their location, their availability. Click on the app, and then it takes them step-by-step directions on where to pick up, how to pick up, and then dropping off as well.
Yeah, I saw a little, on your website, it has a little demo. I think I saw the YouTube video of the app. Yeah. And the functionality seems very intuitive.
Yes, yep.
It reminded me of Uber. So it's funny that you said that because it reminded me of like being an Uber driver, like, oh, I've got a ride I can pick up or whatever.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's a volunteer and you're saving food and getting it to somebody who can use it.
Yep.
Yeah, that seemed pretty cool. On your bio somewhere, I saw that you had stated your kind of what you were doing, the nature of your work for the purpose of ending hunger in Cincinnati. It's a pretty ambitious goal.
Yes, yeah.
How well do you guys think you're doing?
So this year, we're going to be reaching over 3 million pounds of food saved, and that's just within this year. But since we started, which was November 2020, we rescued over 6.6 million pounds of food.
Okay.
And in 2025, just alone, we want to rescue 5 million. So that will help, grow to that number. And so for us, that's still really not coming. That's coming just about close to half of the meal gap that's in Cincinnati. But as we continue to work, what we really prioritize is perishable, good food. So that's going to be frozen meat or like meat, dairy, milk, definitely produce. You rescue a lot of great produce.
Nice.
Because it is really easy. Or sometimes when people think of a food bank and they think of canned goods or they just think of shelf-stable items.
Stuff that lasts forever.
Right, exactly. But there's also a huge need for the produce and meat and for those good items as well. So with the nature of our work, because all of our rescues are 30 minutes or less, we're able to pick up that food. It's just like a trip to the grocery store. It's no different. So we really prioritize those types in order to help balance out what really a meal could be for someone.
Yeah, I mean, most people want meat and vegetables in their meals, right? Not just cans and boxes. So that's really cool. You referenced like the meal gap in Cincinnati. How do you measure something like that?
Yeah, that's great. So there's a lot of great statistics that are available. Hamilton County, also like through Feeding America as well, where you can kind of see what those numbers are. And so what we do is, as we're thinking about areas of where we want to extend food rescue. And so for us, we build relationships with food donors, but also with nonprofits who are in the area as well. And so we actually do use those numbers to see like, where is our greatest need? Where should we be going next? Or where should we be paying more attention to?
If you're partnered with a food distribution organization and on this coordinate or whatever, that you need to have rescue sources somewhere in that vicinity, so you can drive product their way.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Exactly.
Where's the concentration now in terms of like where most of your donors and distribution recipients are located?
Yeah, so right now we operate pretty far down into Kentucky.
Okay.
So all the way down, I believe, down to Erlanger, Kentucky, all the way up to Middletown. the majority of our rescues, majority of our nonprofits and donors are in Cincinnati. I like to say Cincinnati proper, or within that 275 loop.
Okay.
And we have about like 90 agencies who we serve all the way through from Kentucky to Middletown, and then 180 food donors who we rescue food from.
So 180 different donors and 90 different agencies that are recipients.
So those agencies, like I said, they range from shelters to community like pantries where a lot of their community would have shopper's choice. So they can go in almost as if they're at a grocery store and choose what they want. So we service a few of those. We also service some like children's organizations, schools. And then one of our newer, I would say, agencies is an agency of our own called the Last Mile Mobile Market.
Okay.
So we have a van that goes to the city of Avondale, which in the city of Cincinnati was one of the areas that have a greater meal gap.
Okay.
And so we take rescued food directly to that community where the members of that community can come up just like a shopper's choice, just like a farmer's market or a grocery store, and choose the rescued food that they would want to have.
So you've become one of the distributors as well.
Yeah.
What compelled you guys to do that?
Yeah, so that was actually through a great partnership with Cincinnati Children's and the Safe Network in Cincinnati. And they reached out to us and said, hey, this is a need that we have. Do you all think this is something you can take on? And so for us, because we're finding that we're getting a lot of this great food, and we're able to distribute it, but in the Avondale community, we didn't have too many places where we could send the food that we wanted. And so because we got that ask, at the same time we were realizing this area has a huge meal gap, we were like, well, great, like let's do it. And so we were able to get the funding for it. We got a new refrigerated van. And so that refrigerated van, along with some other materials, tents, tables, is what is now servicing that mobile market. Yeah. And so our mobile market is the first like rescued food mobile market.
They're typically like non-perishable kind of stuff.
So they will still have like some perishable items for other, we'll say like markets that are out there, but it's something that maybe they had bought. Or it's, it could be a donation as well, but it's more likely bought items.
Okay.
What we rescue is like distress loads or things that are kind of day of, like things like that, things that aren't like scheduled and such. So,
the solution to the problem you guys are addressing is really, it's all about logistics and efficiency.
Yes.
Right? Like you're not growing or creating the food or whatever. You're just capturing it in time. Yeah. Right. So I love the way you call it a rescue, because otherwise it gets thrown away.
And that's really the whole idea. Like our founders, Julie and Tom, and then our now CEO, Eileen, they were the first three who were with Last Mile since the very beginning, birthed Last Mile.
Nice.
And Eileen, she's always said that it was a logistics problem because, there's enough food waste in Hamilton County to circle the 275 loop over 2 times. Wow. But then there's also a, 13 million meal gap in the area. So it's like with all this food, there shouldn't be a reason why there is a meal gap. And so, but really it is a problem of getting that food that's available, that's being wasted, that's still good. That's also the biggest thing too, is that this food is still good. This is food you and I are gonna buy at the grocery store. Into the hands of those who need it the most.
So why does it get thrown away?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So
it's just upsetting to think about that when people are going hungry, that food's getting thrown away.
Yeah. So one of the biggest things before, like when I was first starting with Last Mile, I joined about 3 months after the group started.
Okay.
And the biggest things from donors was sometimes time, just operationally. Especially during the pandemic, had to make a lot of staff cuts. So it was a little bit more difficult operationally for a food donor to find the time to package up their items, put them in their freezer. Oh, our freezer's running out of space. We over-ordered. Sometimes there's even some logistical solutions within the operations of a food donor. And then additionally, policy as well. So thankfully this year in January, a lot of the policy has changed in favor of food donation. But prior to that, a food donor, rightly so, is a little bit nervous. What if someone gets sick from my food? Am I going to get sued?
Right.
Like, what's going to happen? I'd rather just throw it away and not have to deal with any ramifications that would come out of that. So I would say just from the side of there's not enough staff to put in the effort to donate the food, even just not understanding their own operations, over ordering, just getting rid of it, and then also the policy in the past that used to I would say like sanction food donors if they're not being too overly careful about what they're donating.
Speaking of the risk of donors donating food, there some liability concern.
Yeah.
How do you mitigate that, or how do they mitigate that?
Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier, this year there have been some new policies that have been in favor for food donation.
Okay.
And so now really it's if a donor is donating in good faith. So that means if you're donating, you know this food is good, you have labeled it correctly with the correct dates, you're protected under the Good Samaritan clause.
Okay.
And
so there's some new laws and regulations then that are protecting donors?
Yep. So there's always been the Good Samaritan clause, but it's expanded
to
be able to donate a little bit more freely.
Yeah.
And so even now, if there's someone who comes in and needs food, you know how usually you have to throw away the food that you're not going to be able to use. Now someone can come in and say, okay, I'm donating this in good faith because this person has a need. And so it just makes it a little bit more easy, more flexible, and they've more so like clearly outlined what that Good Samaritan clause is and what it covers. And then it also helps food donors be able to donate food to an organization that could be selling it for like a reduced price. So let's say there's a family that's right on the poverty line, but they don't exactly qualify for SNAP, but then there's an organization that is selling food at a very like heavily discounted Good Samaritan rate.
Okay.
So usually they would have to like buy their food, but now they can receive donated food in that sense as well.
Okay.
And again, because of those policies that have outlined, that have outlined it just to be easier and to also protect food donors in case there is something that goes wrong. But the way that we mitigate a lot of the like food safety risk, because we do have on any given day about 100 volunteers who are on the road, and so like I said, all of our rescues are within 30 minutes. Majority of them, over 80% of them, are within like 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay,
like
nice.
I said, nothing more than a trip to the grocery store. And then outside of that, we also have real-time tracking through our app. So the way that our users are using the app is they're clicking every single time they've arrived at the donor, they've picked up the food, they're traveling to the recipient. So we, and like what I cover, the dispatch operations, our dispatchers are taking a look at each of the rescues. And we're getting alerts if there's something that is at risk for food safety.
Like it's been in a car for too long or something?
Exactly. Yep. So it's been in transit for more than an hour. Then we want to
somebody gets
out.
distracted because they got to go run to get their kid or something.
Yes,
It's like, okay, let's throw that food away.
Yeah, and honestly, that has actually never happened.
Really?
So yeah,
people are pretty responsible about it.
Yeah, and usually the only time that has happened is if someone forgets to click over, to the next phase.
Yeah.
We'll give them a call like, hey, how's your rescue going?
Like, no, I delivered that a half hour
Yep,
ago, right?
exactly.
Okay.
So that's usually the thing that happens. We also don't allow any personal stops while you have food, rescued food in your car. So
I see.
If it is more convenient for you to go make a return or go on a quick shopping trip, then do it before or after your rescue, not doing your rescue.
So your personal logistics may not be optimized perfectly, but you're protecting that the risk associated with the transport.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And then all of our volunteers as well, we call them food rescue heroes.
Nice.
And so they also take a safety training course.
Okay.
So it's a 10-minute course that's designed from the group that we license the app from, just to kind of give just a quick overview on time, temperature control, like washing your hands, not having your pets with you when you do the rescue and things like that.
Yeah. Well, there's two things you brought up that are intriguing to me. It's the training of your food rescue heroes and then the licensing of your app. So let's start with the app. Tell us a little bit about that partnership and the licensing agreement that you have, and how does that work?
Yeah. So there's an organization in Pittsburgh called Food Rescue Hero, and they also themselves have their own food rescue organization called 412 Food Rescue. And so they've created this app, and there are now, I believe, 17 other cities in the nation who are using the app. And so what we do is we just license it from them. But other than that, everyone has their own like independent branding and logo and system. There are some different organizations that are almost like a food pantry or a warehouse distribution center. We just mainly focus on the A to B, that's it. So everyone's a little bit different. They actually have a conference coming up next week. And so it's really great to be able to see all the other cities.
Nice.
But we have licensed the app from them since 2020, so that's almost 3 years now.
Okay, nice. And they handle support and they push out new features and that kind of thing?
Exactly, yeah. So I'm in direct contact with them because they're also a startup as well. I believe they started about 10 years ago or so. So they're still pretty new. They also have a lot of great initiatives that they do in their own community. And so we're kind of, I would say, like working with them on how we can create this app to really be the solution for food rescue in this way. I do think that food rescue is disrupting the industry a little bit when it comes to donation and wasted food. And so it's really interesting to see how much is changing because of that.
It is disruptive, and the idea is because you're just you're pushing food around from A to B. But it just occurred to me what opportunity might exist in the autonomous vehicle frontier, right?
Oh yeah.
I wonder what opportunity there may be there to deploy unused vehicles, because the autonomous vehicle market or prospect of a market in which vehicles are truly autonomous and driving on our roads would essentially create a lot of drivers sitting still. Like if everybody's vehicle, let's say fast forward 10 years or however long, everybody's vehicle is autonomous, it can drive from A to B by itself, that we would have way too many vehicles then. We wouldn't need so many because all those still vehicles could be used, right? While so-and-so is at their office, so-and-so could be using that vehicle. And so I just wonder what opportunity might exist then to leverage some of that capacity as it begins to go to market.
Yeah, and honestly, that forward thinking is so important and so critical. And with us being a nonprofit and a startup nonprofit, one of the things that I've truly valued is how much of a business and forward-thinking sense that our leadership has at Last Mile, which is really what attributes, I think, so much to our success in the community. I've gotten the opportunity to work in so many different spaces, but in this space, it's so different because everyone in leadership has come from a strong corporate background and a strong, and so right now it's like we're leaning into GPT and AI, and it's like I would have never thought about any of that, because
it's all coming so fast.
Coming so fast, but it's also so helpful and it's helping us work faster. And so even to that point, it's like, that is something we should be thinking about, because it can be 10 years now?
Sure.
5 years?
I thought it was going to be 5 years ago, right?
5 years ago. But we also thought AI was going to be way sooner. It's here now,
So things you think are going to be 20 years later happen today. And the things you think are way overdue for some reason take forever, right?
But then they're here before you know it. And so it's like, if you're not thinking about how to make sure that you're incorporating these new pieces of technology, not only do they help make you so much more efficient, but then you are going to get left behind in the dust. So
my mind went there because I first thought, I wonder how many people who are like drivers, like Uber drivers or Lyft drivers or whatever, will also do this, Do you happen to know? Do any of your rescue heroes also do like Lyft or Uber? Or
That's a great question. I actually don't know.
I'm just curious because if there's data you can gather there about whether that worked for some reason, maybe there's a partnership opportunity or something.
And DoorDash actually does have
DoorDash
a philanthropic arm where they do help with food rescue.
Do they?
But we don't have very many restaurants who happy to know. We do have several restaurants who we donate food from, but they're all captured by volunteers right now. So then if we were to have a big rollout of, let's say, a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, right now we have several of those types of organizations. But if we were to have something bigger, because in their mind, the Dasher's already going to those places, you know, and so they can just pick up rescued food. They get paid for it as well. And then they drop off the food. And so I love that idea and love that concept, but we're just waiting on more of those food donors that are in that, because they do it from those types of restaurants.
Who are your biggest donors? I think I have the opportunity to speak with Julie, your founder. And by the way, she is very sharp, high energy, highly intelligent, very observant, very quick thinker. She's got some wit about her, and part of why you guys are being successful. But when I talked with her, she alluded to the idea of certain donors being more better targets than others. So what are your target? Who are you trying to get?
Yeah. So actually right now, we've kind of been bursting at the seams.
Really?
But we like to focus on donations that, again, are like non-perishable. Or why do I keep saying non-perishable? That are perishable. Okay. So perishable, good food, produce, meat, dairy, and also that have a lot that come with it that we can distribute out quickly. And so we like to call some of those distress loads. So actually there was one today. And they always come on a Friday afternoon. It's so funny. But you know, if there's a truck and they're delivering to like a Kroger or to a Walmart or something, and let's say it's an overorder or there's just not enough room or it was a mistake, you know, and so a lot of the times that truck is now just has a whole semi full of produce. Wow. That they need, that will probably go to a landfill if they don't find somewhere to take it. Yes. Wow. And that happened today. And yes. So that happened with some mashed potatoes. Yes. Wow. That happened today with some mashed potatoes. And so it is, so with those, you know. You're not talking about like the Bob Evans mashed potatoes, are you? They were Bob Evans mashed potatoes. Those are the best ones. Yeah. I know. It's like, what do you mean you can't find any space for some? No, but yeah, I know we were able to like work with the trucking partner and stuff. And so sometimes, you know, we're able to get them, sometimes we're not, because everything is so time sensitive. Yeah, that trucker's got to move, right? Yeah. There's another load to pick up. They got another load, they got to get off the clock. Like, you know, so that was what was happening today, was the partner needed to get off the clock. But yeah, and so we call those distress loads. So we do like to receive those calls, even though it's very hectic for us, but it is a lot of like great food. You know, it's almost kind of like more bang for your buck, like the effort that we're putting in and what we're receiving. So how do you get onto somebody's front of mind for that call? How do you get them to say? They always say they looked us up on Google. Really? And so they look for something, and then we're one of the first options that come up on Google. Some SEO. Yeah. Hard at work for you, huh? Yep. And so then another one that I would say that we really like to get as well are like from, also like, you know, wholesalers or packers. Okay. So you're sending few farmers are sending loads and loads and loads of sweet potatoes. It's the season. Sweet potatoes out, and there's a packer who packs them. You know, you see them in the little 3-packs at Kroger and things like that. So we rescue from those kind of organizations as well. We've been targeting those, and those have just been really great for us too. Great opportunities for food rescues. Also from warehouses, we get a lot of milk from warehouses. Okay. And so that's, I would say, as of right now, that's who we've been having our eye on. With restaurants, we are mostly prioritizing working from the top down. So not just going store to store, because every store is so different. And so it's hard to gauge, is this store going to have enough, you know, food to make it worthwhile for a volunteer? I mean, if you think about it, you know, volunteers, they're going to drive however many miles for a bag of food, you know, so that just kind of all around really isn't efficient. Yeah, like one head of broccoli isn't going to be worth that trip. Right? Yeah, and so for us, what's really great when we are able to work from the top down, like we rescue from all the UDF stores in Cincinnati. Okay. And so even though there may be like a store that doesn't have as much, but then the store next to it has a ton, volunteers are able to create routes, you know, on their way to a nonprofit. So for us, like the strategy there, with anytime there's a chain or, you know, there's multiple of that type, or there's multiple like food donors on the way to a nonprofit, we try to set those up to make it the most efficient. That's smart. So I was
wanted to ask you about your drivers. You mentioned them doing some training, and I guess that's for kind of just safety and also being efficient.
Yeah. Yep.
How big is your volunteer, driver, food rescue hero workforce?
Any given week, we have over 100 volunteers who help rescue for us. Over 50% of our volunteers are doing a rescue almost like once a week. So they might have like a weekly route. Each week we have 300 rescues. So that kind of tells you that many of our volunteers are doing more than one rescue in the week. Yeah. Nice. And so that's been really great. Overall, like each year we have about 400 active volunteers, and we have like 4,000 in our system. So there's a lot of people, who sign up, they do one rescue, and then they say, okay, I want to come back to it another time. Yeah. But I would say, 400 active volunteers. And they range from folks who are retired, who need to fill in their time, to, I love it when like stay-at-home moms are doing rescues with their kids and teaching them about philanthropy and food waste and hunger, and like they get to visit the nonprofit, and also really about food waste too, and wasting food at home and seeing like what can happen if this food didn't get rescued or when we waste food, and things like that. So those are, I would say, our most like predominant volunteers right now. That's
interesting. Mm-hmm. I wonder if you could compel the courts to like court order people to do food rescues. Right, yeah,
there we go. That's going to be your new community service.
Your new recruiting outreach is go to the judges.
Yep,
Oh, you got caught littering, you got to do food rescue.
Right.
And they may not be your best motivated heroes, but interesting. Mm-hmm. And then, so you've got hundreds that are active in some interval, and then dozens that are probably doing it repeatedly every week.
Yeah, and so we call those our superheroes.
Okay.
And so they're the ones who have like the minivans.
Their names.
Yeah,
right?
we know their names. They're on our list almost every day. They have the minivan. They can load in 30 boxes of potatoes or cucumbers, and so. And they're always the ones who we call in case we get something like a distress load that we need to distribute quickly.
Right, you got to throw an army at it,
right? Exactly.
Well, let me ask you about that. So how often do you miss an opportunity to rescue food because you don't have enough food rescue heroes, enough drivers?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So we have a missed rescue rate right now. It's about like 1%, which is, for me, not ideal because
it's a small number.
Yeah, it's a small number, but it's like a lot of it sometimes could be a volunteer. They forgot to request a sub for their rescue. They forgot to call in so that we can get it claimed by someone else, because one of our biggest values is reliability and dependability. So whenever a rescue goes missed, that is like knocking us being able to be reliable for the food donor and for the nonprofit. Because with the food donor, we already did so much work to convince them, to pick up the food. So now they're making space in their freezer, in their fridge. They're taking the time out. And then also for the nonprofit, and no one shows up. And now, and then for the nonprofit as well, this is for that they could be depending on for a distribution they have in an hour, and so, I mean, at least me, although the number is below, like, let's say our KPIs, it's really not ideal. And then the missed rescue rate also could be an available rescue that we just weren't able to find a volunteer for. I know during the summer, we have so many people who are out on vacation. And so it's a little bit more common, but what we do is we do have a nice fancy process to help us like with available rescues. And so oftentimes, we stay in constant communication with the food donor, with the nonprofit, letting them know like what's going on, like what to expect. If we're able to reschedule the rescue for later in the day, maybe someone else can get it at a later time. But a lot of our food donors, like you asked about, one of our biggest donors right now is like the Kroger company. And so we rescue from like 17 Kroger stores in Cincinnati.
Nice.
And we rescue from them almost, Kroger. Yeah, zero hunger, zero waste. They're getting there. And so we rescue from most of them, not all of them, but most of them 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday. So if we do end up missing a donation on one day, a lot of the times we're going to be picking up the next day. So then we can say like, okay.
If it's still good, you can pull it too. Right?
And so then, they're pretty good with pulling things like weeks in advance. I think it's
Good.
usually about a week in advance or so. So if we miss a day, that food is still good. The nonprofit will still be there the next day, so then they can arrange, that we can get it to them the next day. But we always try to prioritize like what we have scheduled.
Do you feel like you need more donors, more drivers, or more recipients, like nonprofits to distribute the food?
So right now we need more food. That's the biggest thing. Yes, we need more food. We would definitely love to continue onboarding new Kroger stores, onboarding even just new one-off grocery stores as well. Because again, since we are prioritizing that perishable food, anywhere that could be a source is what we need. The biggest thing is meat right now. A lot of our nonprofits are asking hey, can we get more meat sent our way? And we're if we have it, we will definitely send it. But even, a couple years ago, we would get the distress load calls of meat and turkey and chicken, so much meat. And I don't think we've gotten one this year, and so I think there's just something happening on a macroeconomic level with meat.
Well, obviously, those organizations are trying to reduce those incidents, right? So if they're getting smarter and more efficient, that's good, right? So that food's not going unutilized. But I hope that's the case. And it's not the case that they're just throwing it away. Yeah.
So that's what we would have to kind of investigate, is seeing why is there such a big dip in meat? I mean, I know I was at the store the other day and saw all meat was on sale, so I'm like, okay, maybe we'll be having a rescue of meat here pretty soon, right. Because they're going to be, unless everyone's going to, buy it up because it's on sale. But those are really our biggest needs. And again, we do like to get it from those packers or from those wholesalers, because then we get a nice big load that we can just distribute to a really good amount of our nonprofits.
Interesting. So the packers, the wholesalers, or grocery store chains, restaurant chains that can give you a more kind of holistic window into bigger volumes of food. Interesting. We'll definitely share a little social media post about that.
Yes, that would be great. And then for volunteers or food rescue heroes, really the east side. So that's looking past Eastgate, Amelia, all those areas over there. We definitely need more volunteers in that area. So we have several dedicated volunteers, but whenever they need a sub or a break, that's where we're seeing those missed rescues. And then also a little bit deeper down to Kentucky too. Is where we're looking for more food rescue heroes.
East side of Cincinnati, south side down into northern Kentucky. Those are kind of where your biggest gaps in the volunteer force. All right. How far would you guys go further if you had more donors, and is that kind of the reach that feels appropriate for you? Yeah, we would love Middletown, because we just have, what's really great, is in most of our communities, a lot of the food that's being donated in that community, we like to send to a nonprofit in that community. And so in Middletown, there are a good amount of, there's 2 or so agencies that we work with in Middletown. And then 2 donors, and they're just going, back and forth to each other, so we send there. So we would love to do more in Middletown. There's more volunteers up in that area. And so, they're just kind of probably sitting and waiting for something to come up their way. And so we can definitely move out that way. And I think even if we had more agencies on the west side, in the Mount Healthy area, College Hill area, so that we can just distribute more distress loads out there as well. So that would be helpful too. That's how I would say we're thinking about expanding. But our goal, is to really making sure that we are saturating, taking care of the meal gap where we are, and then using whatever process that we found that works and then expanding it out. Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So you're kind of the logistics person, I guess. Dispatch operations is your baby, right? So what does that entail? Tell me a little bit about your work specifically, because you seem to have a very big picture view of the whole organization, which is good, but you also have some specific responsibilities in the organization. What exactly do you manage for the last mile?
Yeah, so our dispatch operations, that's our day-to-day. I manage our dispatch team. So anytime a food rescue hero is out on the road, or a donor or a nonprofit has any questions, when they call, our dispatch team is the first one to answer.
Okay.
So I manage them, and then our process. So I do like look at our process and review it every year to make it as efficient as possible. Usually throughout the year, we find ways to make it more efficient, but then I get it on paper at the beginning of each year.
You don't wait till Thursday for a shortcut you find on Tuesday. You start doing it Tuesday, right?
Yes. But then usually like we review our process that we have written down every year. So I'm always trying to make things more efficient. I also do a lot with our tech as well. Okay. So we love this one piece of tech that we use called Salesforce.
Oh, nice.
And I look at our analytics. So I do a lot of our analytics on Salesforce. And so I like to keep the heartbeat of our organization. Anything that seems out of whack, I'm going to look at it and figure out why, and then give recommendations out to the team on how we can get things back in control. And so we use Salesforce for that. And then we're also like wanting to just create really a tech kind of culture, within our org, because like I said before, we are a nonprofit at the same time. And so we have some great people on our team who have an awesome like background in nonprofit. But then we also are a tech company, and we truly believe that tech like is part of the solution for this logistics problem between hunger and food waste. And so I'm really like looking at our tech and looking how we can improve our tech. What new tech are we bringing in, especially with Salesforce? Like, how can that be used from an operational perspective to help us grow? And so we have some ideas kind of floating around, but that's been really great and kind of fun. So I didn't have a background in like tech, or I guess I'm also our like stand-in IT person too.
Right. I am for my family too. I don't know why.
It's just like, because I know how to use the things. We use Microsoft, and anytime something breaks, or with our VIOP, I'm the first one who gets the call. And then, like I said, again, with analytics, so we do a lot of that in Salesforce, so like with Excel. And so, so I guess it's kind of, when you work for a startup, you do dabble in a little bit of everything, but that's mostly what I focus on.
That's cool. A lot of times when I used to run a software development organization, and we didn't, we always kind of said, we don't build software, we solve business problems, right? And we just happen to be good at using software to do it or whatever. So I tend to think about tech in the same way. It's easy to get distracted with tech for tech's sake.
Yeah.
Because it is fun.
It is,
it is fun to like put puzzles together and use new tools, right? Yeah. But sometimes, you're using a saw this big to cut a piece of wood this big, and really you could have just done it with a little handsaw faster than getting that thing out, right? The same is true in tech. You can over engineer stuff, and it's tempting for engineering minds like yourself, an analyst, and to over engineer the problem. All that just to say, what I'm really curious about is, you've got this whole volunteer workforce that's doing all the driving, the actual moving of this product from here to there. But I wonder if there might also be great minds out there, and probably my audience is a little more technology, business leader kind of people that follow us and follow me. But I wonder if there might be some great minds out there that could lend solutions or ideas or direction to your organization, just because they believe in the mission that you're doing, right? Not because they're trying to, make money or sell you services or whatever, but just because, I've run into that in the corporate world. You should look into this, right? All that just to say, like, what are some of the, can you give me an example of like a problem or two, or a frontier or two, an opportunity or two that you think there should be a solution to this? Like, this shouldn't be this hard, or it seems like this could be streamlined a lot better.
No, that's really great. And it's interesting that you say that, because like I said, I don't have, but I don't have a background in tech. So I've really just jumped in and have been like growing to love it and growing to like become like pretty all right at it. And so, but I do love meeting with people, meeting with mentors. I have a few mentors in the space, from like analytics to like cyber security, who are helping like direct me and direct the org. And so right now, one of the things, actually, we've been talking about this quite a bit over the past week or so, that we do need to explore is actually this whole distress load, solution. And so right now, when we get a distress load, it's really all hands on deck. It is like phones down, like we're working on this distress load. We need to get it rescued. I mean, it's a lot of food that can go to waste and that can really help people. But is there a more efficient way to do it? Yes, I'm sure there is. But right now, I feel like we're still doing it like paper and pen kind of scratch way.
Okay.
And so we have a lot of great ideas like a reverse auction. Our CEO, she's been saying this for the past 2 years, where what we do is we put it out like, hey, there are 16 pallets of cucumbers and there's 50 cases on each pallet. We send it out to our nonprofits. Let us know when you want it, how much you want, and we'll get the rescues. Like the rescues get scheduled automatically. Great techie solution, but no way that we can build that, So it's kind of like that, we've been really challenged on like thinking differently when it comes to that, even when it comes to engaging with our agencies, especially because our agencies, they're doing 10 different types of services for their community. Their food pantry, their clothing drive, their social services, caseworkers or shelter, and so what I've come to find is that sometimes communication with an agency is not as sophisticated, let's say from a tech perspective, that's really efficient for us to be able to work with them better on like getting them what they need or hearing about any issues or problems that arise. And so we would love to have something like a portal or a way that we can also like bring the agencies with us on this journey of helping solve their problems through technology when it comes to hunger.
Right.
And, and like how can we engage with them and communicate with them in a different way that's not just me sending a text to like 50 people, like, hey, the holidays are coming up. Let me know when you're going to be closed, like something like that. And so
some portal where they can see this is when we're open, providing these services. This is what we're short on that we really need.
Yep.
And where you could look at data and then respond to that in kind of an expedited way.
Exactly. Yep.
As opposed to now it's still one on, hey George, hey Sue, whatever.
That's exactly how it is. Even with surveys, like there's a lot of great tools out there for surveys, but it's still just like, okay, we're getting a Google form and then we have to sift through the Google form, and so we have some constraints when it comes to like money and time and people, as everybody would, but I do believe that we are coming to the realization that we're a tech company. At the end of the day, like if this is where we need to pull our resources because we believe in this being part of the solution, then like that is something that that we're doing. So like right now we're trying to create like this culture, especially with Salesforce, like, okay, culture of Salesforce, everything in one place, everything in this like cloud that we can use to be more efficient. And so I think as we continue to grow, I would say that that's the frontier we're thinking about.
Maybe somebody out there is building a logistics solution like that, portal for their stakeholders that, they could, donate their capabilities or what they've built so far to help you guys be successful because it's certainly a good cause.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. Anyone's out there?
I know, right?
Let us know.
Well, that's the questions, you know?
Yeah.
Well, as we kind of like near the end of the conversation, there was I always try to, as we kind of come to the close of the conversation, I always try to ask guests about what's next, and so what's your goal, in the next year and a half, 2 years, what would you like to see the Last Mile Food Rescue accomplish in the next couple of years? You mentioned kind of like the volume goal that you have for a couple of years from now.
Yeah. Yep. So, like I mentioned before, 2025, we want to rescue 5 million pounds in that year. And then just also looking at next year. So we are again thinking about how we want to frame our thinking and our strategy when it comes to these challenges like distress loads, or even just engaging with our partners like donors and agencies. Again, we're always like what I love about our partnership with Kroger and especially with United Dairy Farmers, UDF. I love working with them on the corporate level because it's just so easy. Like they make it so operationally easy for us. I would love to work with other donors like that on that level. where we can just like, okay, great, there are X amount of McDonald's or X amount of Subways or something in this area, like go rescue from them. And so that's definitely something that we are prioritizing from a sales standpoint. Well, we call it sales, but
you're acquiring donors.
Yes, right? Acquiring donors standpoint. And then also things that are next. We're always growing. So we will be hiring next year, hiring more dispatchers, hiring just someone else who does have a little bit more of that brain, I guess, when it comes to logistics and like a logistics brain, we can say. And so, and then growing as a team as well. We've been doing a lot when it comes to like shaping our culture. And so we did a really great exercise where we've been able to identify our values. Like I mentioned, one of them is reliability and dependability. And so we have some great values. And so now we're like getting our culture statement together. Like, who are we, and just really like truly defining last mile, like where we are in this space, really becoming a voice and a leader like in this industry because it is disruptive as well.
So when you think about, the next couple of years and what you want to build and accomplish in that time, what concerns you the most, or what obstacles make you just a little bit nervous, right? That you need to work hard on. And then how are you going to mitigate those things?
That's a good question. So one of the things I'm actually working on this now is cybersecurity.
Okay.
We haven't had, I guess, knock on wood before I say this, and then all of a sudden something happens.
Right.
And we haven't had a huge cyber incident, which has been pretty good. And we don't have, too much information where if something were to get leaked or hacked, like it's something that you couldn't find online. But, as we continue to grow, like we're getting more exposed, getting more out there as we continue to bring on more technologies. That's just going to open us up even more.
Sure. More endpoints, more vulnerabilities. Right?
Yeah. So that is something that we always think about, what if our licensors are like, hey, we don't want to do this anymore. Then our app, like we don't have an app.
Sure.
What are we going to do? So business continuity, that's always something that we think about. And then also something that makes me nervous is like, what if all of a sudden all of the food donors in Cincinnati are like, hey, come rescue our food, and it's like, oh, we don't have enough volunteers. We don't have enough agencies. Yeah. Although like we have this huge need for food, it does also at the same time make me a little nervous from a dispatch perspective, like seeing how much our dispatchers are currently working, like we'll say our stress, we're going to be bursting at the seams. So that does make me a little nervous, but I'm also excited because we do have a good process for that day to day. But then when it comes to those distress loads or like those bigger rescues, that's where I'm kind of like, oh gosh.
It's like the barking dog barking at the car, getting a hold of the bumper. Now what do I do with it? Right?
Yeah, yes.
It's good. It sounds like you're afraid of success, which means you're preparing for it, right?
Yep. Yeah. And so that's so those two things, like things that I'm working on now, because who knows, the floodgates will probably just open and then we'll have to get moving and get on it. So, and that has happened. Like I said, with UDF, it was all of a sudden they were like, we want you all to rescue from all of our stores in Cincinnati, and then we had to put a plan and a process in place in order to do that. We have growing pains, all that stuff, but it's all like good problems to have. And it really just required us to buckle down and solve them.
You push down hard on the donors, and then if you get it, then you're going to need more drivers, food rescue heroes.
Yep.
And then if you get it, you're going to need more places to put it. So you've got this little trifecta that needs to balance a little bit, right?
That's what our CEO, Eileen, that's what she says. It's a three-legged stool. And so it always has to be in balance so that
if one of them's too short, you're in trouble, right? Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I look forward to you having great problems with that in the coming year. I hope your donor base grows and makes you creates a lot of stressful work for you, getting your dispatch operations to grow accordingly.
Yes.
And best of luck to you at the Last Mile Food Rescue.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
It's been a great conversation. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks.